Clear the air with Kia.
San Francisco driving is wild. Steep hills, tight streets, and traffic that's slower than the fog. But my Kia Hybrid loves it. All those hills help charge the battery. I went from the marina to Bernal Heights, detoured to Oakland, then drove the coast to Half Moon Bay. Still haven't filled up.
Kia hybrids like the Niro and Sportage Hybrid go further on a single tank. No chargers, no stress. And with regenerative braking tech that turns stop and go into smart efficiency, you'll drive more and fill up less. Find your balance at kia.com. Kia, movement that inspires.
Full class, no teacher. I checked my watch, 7:53. Class started at 8. The kindergartners were enjoying their last bastion of freedom in a room with no adults. This meant running around like maniacs and making odd noises with their hands and mouths. I poked my head in and told them to take their seats, please. The girls did. Most of the boys were still struggling to adhere with my command. That was par for the course. I told them again, please take your seats, class is going to start soon. The stragglers finally sat down, except for Trevor. One of the perks of being the principal of an elementary school is most kids respected my title. I walked to the front desk and asked Judy if there had been any word from Diane, the teacher currently missing. Judy said no. That was concerning, especially about someone who was one of our oldest employees. Diane had been here close to 30 years, which was 20 years more than me. I was trying to remember if she had called out since I became principal. As far as I could recall, the answer is no. I asked Judy if she could remember Diane ever calling out. Judy took a deep breath and said Diane was made of iron. She assured me that at some point Diane must have called out, but at this particular moment, the answer was no. She couldn't recall any sick days.
I'll tell you this for sure,
Judy said.
If she did take a day off, she let us know ahead of time.
Generally speaking, the teaching staff was great. As with any job, there are people you can lean on and people you might keep an eye on. Diane was a rock. She reminded me of my mom in a lot of ways. Considering her age, a no-show leads the mind to a dark place. By all accounts, she was in good health, but you never know. She was a friend. It's natural to worry. This is the most stressful part of my day, the beginning. Once everyone is in class and that school bell dings, my stress floats away. Until then, my back gets tight. The pit in my stomach sharpens. 6 classes, 1 for each grade between kindergarten and 5th. When I originally started, they told me I was the youngest principal in the history of Eagle Hill. That's my elementary school. The only elementary school in Old Glenville. That's my town. Tiny school in a tiny town. Tiny but mighty, as we like to say. I was running point for Diane's kindergarten class until the sub showed up. It had been a while since I needed to step in, which is a testament to how good my staff is that it was a rare experience. I kept the kiddos occupied by reading them The 5 Chinese Brothers, one of my favorite books as a kid. There's a multitude of lessons, and the brothers have supernatural powers which always grabs the kids' attention. One brother can swallow the sea. One has an iron neck. One can stretch his legs. One can survive fire, and the last can hold his breath forever. When one of the brothers, a very successful fisherman, agrees to let a young boy accompany him on his fishing trip, well, you'll have to read it to find out. The kids were into it, except for Trevor. Trevor was the problem child. He had been sent to my office numerous times for numerous timeouts. ADHD to the 10th degree. His motor had no off switch. This morning was no different. I asked him more than once within a 5-minute period to please remain quiet. I'd spoken with his parents twice. Conversations were had about sending him to a specialist. They agreed, although it hadn't seemed to yield any changes as of yet. For the most part, the rest of the class was well behaved. There was a knock at the door. I turned and saw Judy standing with a young lady who I assumed was the sub. I walked over. Cherry, this is Principal Harris. I secretly hoped that wasn't her name as we shook hands, but her name was, in fact, Cherry. She was young, 25 at most. Fresh out of the womb is how Judy and I would describe subs who would show up. and we knew immediately they were terrified. Cherry was not that. She seemed calm, cool, collected. There was a hippy-dippy energy that helped her float into the room as I introduced her to the students. Class, I want to introduce you to your substitute teacher. This is Miss Lamia. Can you give her a big warm hello, please? 25 tiny hellos bellowed at all different times. Cherry stood there with her hands cupped in front of her belly button with only a lip smile, her eyes drifting across the faces of every child. She just stared at them. I turned to her and said loud enough for the children to hear me, "I'll be down the hall if you need me." She didn't turn back to me, and she answered and said,
Oh, I think we'll be just fine. Isn't that right, children?
Me and Judy exchanged looks as we walked out of the classroom and into the hall. There still had been no word from Diane. I was getting worried. I asked Judy to find her emergency contact and give that a ring. We had the sub now, so now it was just a matter of making sure Diane was okay. I gave Cherry's file a quick review. Everything seemed in order. Recent college graduate, only 23 years old, born in Dorset, Massachusetts. It wasn't our job to vet the subs. There was a little bit of a blind date vibe to the whole process. Judy would act as doorman, giving them a once-over prior to our little chat and entering the classroom. That was the extent of it. After that, survival.
They think it was a stroke.
Oh my God. Oh, poor Diane. I braced myself for this sort of news. Her not showing up without warning had to mean it was bad. Sometimes being right really sucks. Her husband was the emergency contact with the info. He sounded like he was in worse shape than her. Diane's husband adored her. Easy to see why. They were a really sweet pair. The kind of couple you aspired to be one day. People who were always smiling or trying to make others smile. That was them. All the time. Judy asked me if I wanted to go to the hospital and check in on her later in the week. I said absolutely. But now it was a matter of finding a permanent sub. The school year had only started 3 months ago, so this was a big undertaking for whoever was filling her shoes. When I had a moment, I walked back over to Cherry's classroom to see how she was holding up. It had only been an hour, but people have quit in less time. Sad, but true. I looked inside. She wasn't teaching. She wasn't doing anything. She was just sitting at the front of the classroom on the floor, eyes closed, as were all the children. They had mimicked her sitting style, hands out over their knees, palms up, taking long, steady breaths in unison. Except for Trevor, he was lying on his side, kicking his legs and making motor noise with his mouth. When I turned back to look at Cherry, she was already looking at me, smiling. The bell rang. It startled me in a way that it had never before. Normally, I associate that sound with the world going as planned. Today, it was all about Diane. We shared similarities in ways that were both obvious to strangers and known only to us. Knowing that she was destructible carved a hole into my stomach that was beginning to breathe fire. I walked with Cherry as she led the class towards the gymnasium, and I asked her, "What was that you were doing with the class when the bell rang?"
Oh,
She told me.
it's a form of meditation designed specifically for young children. They seem to really enjoy it. I find it's a nice way to start the day.
She had a glowing smile, those pearly whites, the sundress, long flowing hair. She made me feel old. Older than the news about Diane. Normally, the kids would be doing cartwheels in the gymnasium. It's their favorite part of the day for a reason. Cherry's meditation session had made them move at a normal speed. A well-behaved speed. We'd had internal discussions about incorporating something like that for kids. Diane had been the one who pointed out a study she read which prompted meditation for children. My position as principal packed my plate, so incorporating meditation was low on the totem pole of my priorities. But if there's a non-prescription way to make kids stop bouncing off the walls, I'm all ears. When I got to my office, I saw Kieran sitting in the timeout chair. The 5th grader who made a habit of getting sent to my office. King of the timeout. He took pride in this. This delinquency was not new. There had been talks with his parents multiple times. As soon as you speak with them, you get it. The bad apple doesn't fall far from the timeout tree. It's a shame. You feel sad for the kid at first, but after one too many times bullying a weaker kid, the empathy starts to slide away, and you just want to call in the parents so you can give them a good smack. Today, Kieran was in timeout because he stole someone's lunch, even though he had his own. So why? Why would he do such a thing? He didn't hesitate with his answer.
I wanted cookies.
We all do, I thought. Last year, I told his parents he should see a child psychologist. Last time I spoke with them, it had not started yet. What a shock. Why listen to the professionals when you can follow your toxic gut? Boys will be boys was the reason for his acting out. His older brother was a jerk, too. Bullies breeding bullies. I was bullied. I know what it feels like to be on the bottom of that pile. I had Kieran write a letter of apology. And there were parameters to the letter. I wanted Kieran to stew in his misbehavior, make him understand that those were not his cookies to eat. That's not how life works. If you want cookies, you have to earn them for yourself. I don't like this kid. Nobody does. Maybe I should start meditating. Or eat a cookie. I couldn't get out of my chair. Thinking of Diane, by any metrics, she's not old or unhealthy. It felt random, cruel. I don't like random or cruel. It makes life unpredictable. And I take pride in eliminating the variables that life enjoys throwing at us when we least expect it. It was dark by now. The only person still here was Joe the janitor. I found the pushing of his large wastebasket through the hall oddly comforting, the way it would occasionally rumble and glide along the carpet. No matter what happens, tomorrow is a new day. Joe comes through the hall and sweeps it all away. Diane's things. Oh, it popped into my head. Was there something she would want, need, left behind? When I got to the doorway of Diane's classroom, Cherry was still there. It startled me to see her still there, staring out the window perfectly still. Cherry? She didn't turn, at least not all the way. I saw just the side of her face. Her eyes were closed. Why are you still here? She turned, opened her eyes, and smiled.
It's such a beautiful room. So much positive energy, I didn't have the time to appreciate it today. I thought it would be beneficial for me to embrace the space, considering I may be here for a while. Is that okay?
It's rare to not know if someone is crazy. Typically, it's a black or white issue. The ones tiptoeing on the lunacy fence are a rare species. If you have to think about it, the answer is probably yes. I hadn't really had a chance to speak with her about how the first day went. Normally, that was a priority. Today, my head was elsewhere. She told me that the children were wonderful, that it's such a blessing to be able to shape their minds before the world tells them to stop raising their hands, squashing their curiosity. I didn't agree with that, but she seemed sincere. And I had put in a request to have a new sub tomorrow anyway, so why end on a bitter note? I walked her out of the school. She was sharing her thoughts on a lesson plan for tomorrow and a lesson plan for the rest of the week. Before she could continue, I told her that sounded interesting, then pointed to my car. When I asked where she was parked, she said she didn't have a car.
God wants us to walk. The devil sends a limo.
And we have a verdict. The jury was done deliberating. Cherry is crazy. I offered to give her a ride, partly out of generosity, mostly to see where she lived. Cherry declined politely. She said this was her favorite time to walk, and her home wasn't too far. She shook my hand and thanked me for the opportunity before saying goodnight, followed by,
See you tomorrow.
There was no tomorrow for me and Cherry. Our relationship was thankfully being swept away. Not by Joe. Joe the janitor can sit this one out. I was happy to hold that broom. The person who fills Diane's shoes needs to earn it. Maybe tomorrow we'd find our Cinderella. Only time will tell. When I looked in the rearview mirror for Cherry, she was already gone. Nobody could beat Judy. Anytime I wanted to show up a little early, Judy was already here. Today was no exception. I had slacked a bit yesterday with Diane weighing on my mind, so I wanted to get the worm. I was eager to see who Diane's sub would be today. I needed to secure a long-term replacement. When I asked Judy who that person was, she told me they were already here. Great, I thought.
No,
Judy said.
Cherry is the replacement.
I began to tell Judy that I put in a request for a new sub. She rightfully pointed out that our request for a new educator had been denied. Denied? Before I could even pick up the phone to find an explanation, Judy told me she was here. Cherry. In, as she put it, her classroom.
Good morning, Principal Green. I moved some furniture around. I hope that's okay.
She had pushed all of the desks towards the back of the class, including her own. 3/4 of the room was now just open space with a clutter of tiny tables and chairs against the wall.
The rows create a sense of hierarchy. Kids in the front feel more seen. Everything about it just feels primitive. I think it might be better if we made the children feel as if we were all in this together. Is that okay?
She wasn't being hostile, and if I told her to put it all back the way it was, she would have, I'm sure of it. But the look on her face, so eager to please, so sincere. The second day, I remember my second day, when it becomes real, the job, the career, the future. My mouth was opening to speak, but I felt a tap on my hip. It was Trevor. He was smiling, holding up an apple for me. I was hypnotized by this apple. Had he poisoned it? Is this how I die? A diabolical apple? There was a new person in timeout, but it wasn't a kid. It was Trevor's mother. She shot up out of her chair and asked if we could talk for a moment. I said, of course, leading her into my office. We had met once before, about 6 weeks ago. At the urging of Diane after her attempt to speak with the parents crashed and burned, the father was dismissive. Above it was how Diane described the scene. The mother was just quiet. Scared, as Diane put it. Dad seemed disinterested in acquiescing to the advice of the professionals.
Boys being boys.
He said it. Where had I heard that before? Whatever you did, she told me, keep doing it. Trevor came home yesterday, did all of his homework, then his chores. First thing, after that, he started cleaning the house. His father got real mad because now he thinks he might be a queer. I don't care if he is or isn't. They can do whatever they want in the privacy of their own home is how I look at it. What a hero, I thought while clawing the inside of my desk. This woman was terrified of her husband. The family dynamic was made of tissue paper. She thought I would appreciate hearing how well behaved he was yesterday. Now we can put all that therapy talk to bed, she said. 6 feels pretty young for some quack to poke around in my kid's head, right? Restraint. This is the key to my job. I thanked her for the good news and I escorted her out of my office. It was time to find out why Cherry was still here. Why had my request been denied? Because there were no other options? The nature of its simplicity was maddening. Yeah, we had a tiny town, but it didn't seem unreasonable to have an alternative substitute. Apparently not. Me and Cherry would have at least one more day together. There was a new wrinkle to this morning's meditation. Humming. The door was closed. I tried to read lips as if this was a skill I possessed and not something I saw in a James Bond movie. Their tiny mouths were moving too fast for me to have any shot at knowing what they were saying. They were all on the floor in the shape of a circle, as Cherry sat in the middle on a tiny swivel chair, gently pushing herself around and around. I checked my watch. 5 minutes until first period ends. Had she spent the whole hour doing this? Hippies creep me out. Just a little nudge away from joining a cult. Funny how Mother Earth has such a depth of personas. Appreciate nature or start a psychotic religion. Both options are on the table to someone who considers themselves enlightened. Cherry, who was she? King Kieran back on his throne of disobedience. Kieran had shoved Matt Holko into the wall and given him a bloody nose. I asked why he did it.
He didn't apologize for stepping on my shoes and making them dirty. My dad bought me these.
Maybe it was his lack of empathy. Maybe it was the sting of losing Diane, but as I stared into the beady eyes of Kieran, I couldn't help but wonder what his face would look like on the end of a stick. This little prick. I didn't want him in my office. I wanted him gone. I wanted... Cherry? At lunch, I went into her classroom. Her classroom. Day 2, and it had already become hers. She was reading quietly on the floor. I couldn't see what the book was. It had a dark green cover. We had a quick chat about her lesson plan for the rest of the day. She said that she had emailed it to me last night. And that's true. It's also true that I deleted it because I figured I wouldn't see her again. I told her I wanted her to walk me through it, right after she told me what made Trevor change so suddenly. His mother had come in speaking about him as if he was a new person, a new boy.
Well, that's wonderful to hear,
She said.
Well, it's quite simple, really.
She didn't finish the sentence. She just looked at me, smiling. I hunched my neck forward and asked what was so simple. What had she done, specifically? The bell rang. The kids would be back soon. I told her that the reason I asked is because there's another child. I couldn't even say his name, whom we've had some trouble with recently. Perhaps she could try speaking to him. That's a win-win for me. Either Cherry would use her black magic to cure Kieran, or he'd give her a bloody nose. And both outcomes made me want to grab some popcorn and watch the show. She said she would be more than happy to speak with him.
Perhaps during lunch tomorrow? Send the child here. Maybe I can...
Another unfinished sentence. Queen of the cliffhangers. If nothing else, I now had a reason to look forward to tomorrow. King and queen, hand in hand. The morning rush felt slow. Some of the children were much more muted than normal as they entered through the front doors. The shared trait among the quiet kiddos was that they were all in kindergarten. Cherry's children were walking in straight lines, keeping to themselves, holding hands with just one other child in their class as if they had been paired off. They moved through the hallways undetected, like little ninjas, while the other older kids continued to yammer on about what's cool. I stood outside her classroom as they came through in twos and sat on the floor in unison. Cherry didn't have to say anything. They just got to their spots and began their tiny hums. I walked in. Cherry smiled at me and put a finger over her mouth, hoping I would stay silent. My agenda for the day was blowing out the window. I wanted to see what this lesson plan was. An hour. 1 whole hour of children sitting in silence? You gotta see it to believe it. I stepped out momentarily to let Judy know I'd be spending a significant time supervising Cherry. As I stepped out and looked across the hall, I could see Carol's second grade class meditating.
Morning circle. Building a sense of belonging and focus for the day ahead. Thematic exploration. Help children express identity and learn about their classmates. Snack and story time. Healthy snacks.
The story was from Cherry's book. She read from it as I sat there in the dark, wanting to know what this book was and who wrote it. The story revolved around a woman who had begun to merge with the earth. Her feet turned to grass. Her hands turned to sand. Her legs turned to wood. Her eyes turned to fire. I was alarmed. Not just for the fire, but because of how riveted the kids were. You had to see it to believe it. This was becoming a trend with Cherry. Her lesson plan was working. Up next was lunch, and that meant the king and queen would finally meet on the battlefield. Kieran was sitting in the timeout chair in my office as I walked in with Cherry. He was using permanent marker to color, which was, no doubt, staining my desk. I introduced Cherry to him. He made a farting noise with his lips. I told her I was going to go out and eat a sandwich outside. She spoke to me while looking at Kieran.
It's a lovely day for a sandwich.
Truer words had never been spoken. I closed the door and shot Judy a smile wider than Texas. For lunch, I stuck with her kindergarten class, watching as they avoided the jungle gym, the swings, the tiny basketball court. All of that was invisible to them. What they did see was grass. They all sat together and held hands without shoes on. I asked them if they were playing a game. They all turned and looked at me. Trevor was the one who spoke.
She sees you.
I'm sorry, Trevor? Who sees me?
Mother.
They all said in unison. Mother Nature? I waited for an answer that would never come. They just stared and smiled until the bell rang. I used to love that bell. Now it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Time to see if the king had been dethroned. I went inside and saw that Judy was just staring at my door. I asked her what was up, and it took her a second to notice my presence. Then she snapped to it and said it had been very quiet in there. Too quiet, she emphasized. I opened up and walked in. Empty. I asked Judy when they had left. She said they hadn't. She'd been there the whole time and never saw them leave? I asked Judy, did they do a cartwheel out of the window? She didn't appreciate my tone. I apologized, but the reality was my office was empty. My desk, it had been pushed up against the wall. My guest chairs, the same. My office had been the scene of a rug sitting.
Principal Green?
I knew it was Kieran before I turned around, saw him standing there, smiling, holding an apple.
As a token of apology for my disobedience.
Oh my God, I thought. Cherry Poppins had done it again. She broke the wheel. What was she doing? Judy walked up from behind and tried to casually alert me that there were more parents outside waiting to speak with me. Oh God, I said, what now?
They want to thank you for correcting their children.
I poked my head out and looked. A line, a long line, at least 20 parents, maybe more. They stood there so proud, the smiles on their faces, so warm, so inviting. I told Kieran to go back to class and then pulled Judy inside. She was my consigliere, the only person who could grasp the totality of this situation. Isn't this kind of insane? I asked. Is she brainwashing the children?
Whatever she's doing,
Judy said.
it seems to be working.
Then Judy made an odd face. Something caught her attention. I told her I couldn't handle more. This moment was enough.
No, just funny. The parents out there, they're all moms.
I was watching garbage on TV. Trash I would never watch typically, but I needed the distraction. An ugly distraction. It was getting late, way past my bedtime. Tomorrow was Friday, and this week from hell was almost over. The parents were ecstatic. They were praising me to the heavens about how well behaved their children had become. I should have been beaming. This is what all school administrators dream of, a parade of parents showering you with accolades. But the particulars were too bizarre, too mysterious. How do you change a child in one conversation? My doorbell rang. When you live alone in the suburbs and the doorbell rings at midnight, your mind expects the worst. Who could that possibly be? Who would show up to ring my bell without calling first? I opened up the shades to get a better peek. It was all of them. Her entire class sitting on my front lawn. During the day, this might have been the definition of tranquil, children playing in the grass as the sun hit their tiny heads. At night, under the pitch black sky, 25 children sitting in the dark, together in complete silence. They all had their heads down. I couldn't see any of their faces, but their mouths were moving in unison, as if they were one person. I very slowly opened my front door. As soon as I stepped outside, all 25 of their faces raised up and they pointed towards me.
She sees you.
I slammed my door shut, trembling. I ran towards the kitchen and grabbed the phone off the wall. My hands were bubbling as I dialed 911. They picked up and asked what my emergency was. I tried to be coherent. My head was bobbling and I could feel my heart tearing apart like an accordion. There are children outside on my lawn. My children. Not my children. Children from... The voice cut me off.
Don't worry, Principal Green. Everything's going to be fine.
I stopped pacing. What? How did you know who I was? I didn't tell you my name. The voice on the other dissolved into static and then turned into this haunting howl. I heard a scratching against the back door. I very slowly turned around, slower than Cherry had turned to me when I saw her alone in the classroom 2 days ago. It was Diane, wearing her hospital gown. She had her back turned to me. I started to walk over to the window. The scratching sound was her. Sliding up the glass, Diane was levitating off the ground. I froze as I watched her body float up and then out of sight as her bloody feet left 2 deep red parallel lines running up the glass. I ran up my stairs into the bedroom and I shut the door and I locked it. And then I darted towards my bed. I picked up the phone. I desperately tried to think of someone I could call. My mother? I'll call my mom. What was her number? My mind went blank. I went one by one until I heard it begin to ring. Please pick up, please pick up, please pick up.
Hello?
Mom? Mom, it's Tara. Okay, just listen, please. You have to believe me. The children, She cut me off quicker than the cop.
Do you think they've made a home?
What? I said, who are you talking about, Mom? You have to help me. The children.
The worms.
She said.
The worms swimming around my bones.
As my body melts into the earth.
I felt something on my ear. I looked at the phone and worms were crawling out of my speaker. I dropped the phone and I backed up against the wall. I heard a scratch against my window. Diane. She was now staring at me, and I could see her face being ripped apart in two. As her skull cracked open, spiders and snakes began crawling out of her eyes. Her trail of blood was gushing, covering my window, leaking inside and dripping onto my carpet. Tiny knocks on my door. They got louder and louder and louder. Diane smashed my window open with her broken skull, and then her head rolled to my feet. It split open like a baked potato and became a volcano for hideous insects and reptiles. My door opened. It was her, Cherry, smiling.
Come back alive. Come back alive.
Come back alive. Come back alive. Come back alive.
I woke up screaming. It was the most intense nightmare I had ever experienced. I was still shaking during my shower, trying to rub off the atrocities of those visions which felt so real. I had to get out of my house. I dreaded the idea of coming back here later. I had never felt that way about my home before. I assumed this would all shake off my skin soon, once I got back into the real world and felt the weight of other people's atrocities to make mine feel small. You could hear a pin drop. Not just in the parking lot. Not just during the walk to the school. Inside. The ominous silence of a quiet school. It felt so unnatural. It was early. Expecting only Judy, I walked past the main office. No Judy. The halls? Empty. But the classrooms? Packed. All of the children were here, sitting on their respective floors, doing their morning meditation.
Principal Green, to your office, please. Principal Green, to your office, please.
Thank God, Judy, she's here. I needed Judy. I walked back so I could lean my emotional head on her welcoming shoulder. But the main office was still empty. She had just spoken to me over the intercom. Where the hell did she go?
Principal Green?
I turned around. The room was empty. My door started to gently open, and I could see Cherry. Just the back of her, sitting in my guest chair. I walked in with trepidation. I thought if she didn't hear me walk around her towards my chair, it might make her disappear. She didn't. She was there, smiling, telling me to please take a seat in my own office. So I did. And then I asked her, "What do you want, Cherry?"
I just wanted to check in. We haven't had much time to chat about my lessons.
How? I asked, standing up. How are you making the children change? Please explain it to me.
Oh,
She said, smiling.
I make them feel seen. It's the ones who live in shadows you have to worry about, Principal Green. If we can just bring them all out into the light.
She was doing it again. That buffering thing where her sentences cut off halfway through. The bell rang. Cherry started to get up until I shut the door. No. Make me understand. How did you make them all change so quickly? She got off my chair and sat on the floor. Extended her hand, waiting for me to accept it. Accept her. I look at it, the hand, the smile.
It won't take long, Principal Green. All you gotta do is let the light
in.
My phone rang. It was Judy's husband, Cliff, telling me that Judy had a heart attack last night. I turned away from Cherry and sat on the edge of my desk. I asked where she was. He told me. He said she's in pretty rough shape, but I'm welcome to come see her if I want. I said I would soon, and then I hung up. When I turned around, Cherry was gone. I opened my door and saw that the office was now filled with moms, all smiling. Those big, glowing smiles. They were holding apples. I started to open my mouth, but nothing came out. I walked past all of them without saying a word. I had to get out of there. I had to see Judy. Cliff and their kids were all hanging out in the hospital waiting room, consoling each other, waiting for updates. I gave their now adult kids hugs, and I told them how sorry I was. And then Cliff asked if I could speak with him in private. I said, of course, and we stepped away near the vending machines. He started asking if Judy had seemed sick at all recently. And I said, no, good as ever. Yeah, he agreed. He thought so too. We were putting our heads together, trying to think if anything from our respective worlds might have led to this, at work or at home, and we paced a bit. And there was Diane, of course. Strokes and heart attacks are not contagious, Cliff said. I told him I'd been very stressed lately because of Diane, and maybe Judy felt the same way. She just didn't wear it on her sleeve like I did. He nodded. I delicately asked Cliff how it happened. What was Judy doing when she fell ill? That was the oddest part, he said. It's the last thing anyone would ever associate with having a heart attack. Judy, right before it happened, she was meditating.
In the glow of your smile, I find my way home. Guided by your warmth, no longer alone. You light up the shadows with every soft tone. Lost in the light, with you it feels right. Hearts intertwined in this beautiful night. Time flows like a river as we dance through the dark. Every whisper a promise, we still hold the spark. With you in the silence, the world fades away. Lost in the light, with you it feels right. Hearts intertwined in this beautiful night. Just hold me closer now. Let the magic unfold. In this dream that we found, our love pure as gold. Lost in the light, with you it feels right. Hearts intertwined in this beautiful night.
Clear the air with Kia.
I wanted to go electric, but I also wanted something built here, not shipped in. That's how I found the EV6, built in the state of Georgia and packed with more United States and Canadian parts than any other car sold here, whether an EV or not. Sleek design, over 300 miles of range, and yeah, the EV6, it's a Kia. Same goes for the EV9. Big, bold, 3 rows, all electric, and assembled in the U.S.
If you're looking for American built and electric, you don't have to choose. Just start with Kia. Movement that inspires.